Heraclon Publishing presents Dime Crime Volume 2, Songs in the Key of Death, written by William Bankier, narrated by Mark Hebscher. The Choir Boy. The musicians had taped their tracks and departed the studio, heading for wherever musicians go in Toronto on a July morning. Now, Barry Latchford was alone in the soundproof room, adding his voice to the pre-recorded background. In the control room, Norman Inch pressed the intercom button. "You're a disappointment, Barry," he said. Latchford was a sinewy man in his 30s with shoulder-length blonde hair and a sinister-looking mustache. Padded earphones gripped his head. He wore a striped freight engineer's cap to go with his vagabond outfit of leather vest and stovepipe jeans. His boots were army surplus, parachute corps. Barry Latchford resembled more a villain out of a spaghetti western than the best singer of TV and radio commercial music in Canada. The drummer on the gig had been awarded the laugh of the morning when he said Latchford looked like a tall, angry Muppet. When the producer from the advertising agency told him he was a disappointment, Latchford sat erect while a jolt of fear emptied his eyes. What's the problem? He was a perfectionist, enough to believe that criticism was always justified. Once, years ago, he had become a hermit for weeks, practicing his scales and breathing to be ready for the December night when the choir would perform The Messiah. Behind the glass, Inch put a hand on the shoulder of his companion Steve Pullman, the copywriter. "We were hoping we could stretch this session into an extra day," he said, his voice booming through the speaker. "But if you keep delivering the goods on the first take, we'll be on our way back to Montreal tonight." Latchford relaxed. He slipped off the stool, eased the cans from his head, and hung them on the music stand. "My wife complains about the same thing," he said. "I'm fabulous, but I'm a little too quick." "We'll hear a playback of everything so far," Inch proclaimed. "Then we'll buy you a drink." They went into a place near the studio. After drinking and talking baseball for a few minutes, Pullman said to Inch, "Tell Barry the idea. Let's not waste time." "Mysterioso," Latchford said, taking an invisible sip of whiskey. "We write songs," Inch said dogmatically. "You've never heard of us because our commercial success to date has been the square root of nothing at all." "Welcome to the club." "Come on, you were in the charts with Apple Dreams a couple of years ago." "The Canadian charts, and even that was a struggle. I've never made it with a pop single in the U.S." "So, let's get together and create some prosperity," Pullman said. "Tell him the idea, Norman." "The idea is you come down to Montreal and record one of our songs." Latchford could feel remorse rising above him like ground mist in a horror film. God protect him from amateur songwriters. "Cutting aside is an expensive business," he said, in the gloomy voice of a businessman. Pullman's impatience was beginning to peak. "Will you tell him the idea, Norman?" "We do it through my company, Inchworm Productions. The recording studio will be Carlo's. He owes us a couple of favors, so there'll be no studio charges. As for musicians, we'll do it on half scale. If the song takes off, everybody gets paid." Latchford looked for a way out. "I'll have to check it out with Carol, my wife. She's my business manager." "Do it, and let us know as soon as you can." Inch directed glances around the room, like a marked man watching out for assassins. "Even if you make the record and it's okay," Latchford persisted, "you're only halfway there. If the stations won't play it, you're dead." "Leave that to me," Pullman said. "I worked for 3 years as a DJ at CBAY. Baytown?" Years ago on vacation, Latchford had spent an eventful 30 seconds driving through the town. "The voice of Crystal Bay," Pullman intoned, cupping his ear pseudo-professionally. "I know how the hit parade can be rigged." "Providing it's a good song," Latchford said. "You can't sell garbage." "We won't give you garbage to record," Inch said patiently. "Be a good boy and go check with your wife." Carol Latchford sat at the kitchen table in one of the old cinema seats Barry had bought when the neighborhood palace gave up and became a block of shops. 4 maroon plush recliners were now bolted to the vinyl floor, 2 on either side of the low pine table. "I think you should record their song," Carol said. She was drinking beer from a bottle and smoking a thin, brown cigarette. Latchford was playing around with a wok on the gas stove, throwing in green peppers and mushrooms and slivers of chicken, being a virtuoso chef. "These are 2 little businessmen from the minor leagues," he said. "The writer is from Baytown. Do you believe that? It's amateur night." What are you doing otherwise that's so important? Carol was a short, plump woman in her late 20s. She had a pussycat mouth, a turned-up nose, and green eyes with brows that arched in permanent astonishment. If faces had to be assigned countries, hers was Irish. Something may come out of it. You can never tell. You don't know these guys, Latchford insisted. Take me to meet them, she said, finishing her beer, dropping the empty bottle into the case on the floor at her feet, and flicking out a full one with a deft backhand movement. Latchford frowned at the hiss of the bottle cap. Could you manage to be sober if I did? I can't remember the last time you took me somewhere. That's where you have the advantage. I can remember. Loosen up, then. Have a drink with me. We'll have some fun. You call this fun? Steve Pullman was setting out a meager bar in Inch's hotel room, a bottle of scotch, a bottle of gin, some tonic, 4 glasses, and a bucket of ice. Why couldn't they ask us up to their place, he whined. He felt poor, as if he was back in his parents' shabby house near the bay. His wife probably wanted to come out, Inch said. He was accustomed to pacifying his partner. Writers were all the same. If they weren't bitching about how terrible everything was, they were going over the top with enthusiasm over some minor success. I don't think he likes our idea, Pullman said. Then we'll sell it to him. Maybe we should line up another singer. Latchford's the best. We agreed we'd start with the best. I'm worried about how we finish, Pullman said grimly. The Latchfords arrived in a mood of manufactured euphoria. Carol was wearing a crimson silk jersey dress and charcoal nylons above plastic shoes without backs. Pullman fell in love with her legs immediately. He ordered the beer she requested and, when it came, and he had opened one, placed himself where he could see every one of those frequent crossings of those smooth, shiny legs. Everybody except Latchford drank a lot, and the party was a reasonable success. By midnight, when they were devouring room-service sandwiches and Carol was into her 7th pint of beer, Pullman was referring to her as the small-town girl. She was like the girls he remembered from the tea dances in the gymnasium at Baytown High School. Carol was flattered. Let this guy write your lyrics, Barry, she said. He's a magician with words. Latchford tossed his head back, pretending to laugh without actually producing a sound. In the taxi on the way home, he grumbled, I should see a psychiatrist agreeing to do this. We'll go to Montreal. We'll have some fun for a few days, Carol said. Her head was back on the upholstery, her eyes closed. What can you lose? You'll have fun. I saw you encouraging that Bush League lover. I should put you across my knee. Right now, I'd be grateful for even that. Flora Inch, Norman's wife, selected the song that Latchford would record. She came out of her study in the bungalow across the river in St. Lambert, with the portable cassette player in one hand and a page of notes in the other. Here's my choice, she said. Summer Silence. Norm read from the list. He tried not to look too pleased. I like that one, too. Flora moved a flower pot so she could perch on a window ledge. Her broad shape obscured most of the view of the Montreal high-rise panorama in the distance. Richelieu, the tiny dog of indeterminate breed, limped from the kitchen, saw the woman he loved, took a skittering run, and leaped onto a lap that barely existed. Flora saved the dog from falling and cuddled it to her tank-topped bosom. She had the shoulders of a channel swimmer, the cropped hair of a woman who wants a rest. Her face was as pretty as a doll's. Richie, Richie, she crooned. Then, after a pause, in which her eyes went out of focus, the lyric could use a little fixing. Would you like me to do it? I don't want to hassle with Steve. You want a good lyric? Steve Pullman has blind spots. I know. I wrote copy in the next office for 3 years. You may be right, but leave it alone. We have a delicate operation here. Stay home and write your novel. God help me. I've written it 3 times. Let me up. You're the one who cried out for artistic freedom. Write the book. I'm coming to that recording session. I'm not going to miss the rematch between Latchford's wife and our little Stevie. Carlo's recording center was a compact set of rooms engineered and hand-built by the owner. Carlo sat at the console, straight back, Spanish eyes alert, watching Barry Latchford through the glass partition as if the singer might fly at any minute and it would be his responsibility to trap him in a net. Norman Inch lounged beside Carlo in the producer's chair. Steve Pullman and the 2 women were crowded onto the visitor's settee. Flora Inch had always been like a sister to Steve, taking him under her wing on the first day at the ad agency. She sat on his left now, bending occasionally to feed a chocolate tidbit to the carpet remnant she called a dog. "This is your best work, Steve," she commented after the first take. "Be proud of this song." On his right, Carol Latchford crossed her legs, bringing a stiletto heel down across Pullman's trousers. "Sorry," she said, brushing her hand firmly and repeatedly over his calf. By the third take, everybody agreed Latchford had done his best. Carlo had a paying client coming in, so the session had to end. "Everybody come over to St. Lambert," Flora said briskly, scooping up Richelieu. "Can we all squeeze into my car?" They straggled out of the control room. "Looks like you're on my lap, Carol," Pullman said. Inch directed a weak grin at Barry Latchford, who looked right through him as he unwrapped 2 sticks of gum and stuffed them into his mouth. Flora Inch's food was late, but meanwhile the wine flowed and the house filled with the aroma of roasting beef and salad dressing spiked with garlic and dry mustard. When the inebriated guests sat down at the table and fell on the meal, they all told the hostess it was the most delicious they had ever eaten. "Have some more beef, Steve," Flora said. She was drifting to and from the kitchen beyond a waist-high divider lined with cherry cheesecake and a pecan pie. "I don't want to end up feeding sirloin to that piggy Richelieu." "You aren't eating, Barry," Inch scolded the singer. "I'm always down after a session," Latchford mumbled, looking into space. "Don't mind me." "Don't mind him," Carol echoed. "Barry Baby will retire to the wilderness shortly and communicate with his inner spirit. 1 Magnificat, 2 Te Deums, and a fast chorus of Panis Angelicus, and he'll be good as new." "Don't give that lady any more to drink," Latchford said with a false smile. "Are you a choir boy?" Flora asked. "I used to pipe away with the altos at St. James the Apostle on St. Catherine Street. If this was Saturday night, we could drive over tomorrow morning for a matin." "I wouldn't mind that," Latchford said, his pale eyes staring through the window into the twinkling black mass of the Montreal skyline. In the weeks that followed, after the Barry Latchford recording of Summer Silence was released, some of the euphoria began to wear off. They had a good song, but pessimism arose as they listened to it for the 150th time. Inch lifted the tone arm. "Where do we go from here?" They were using the agency studio for their private business. "To church," Pullman said dryly. "Like your wife keeps saying, only we go to pray, not to sing." "Pray, hell! The whole idea, your idea, is that we don't leave things to chance. It's in the lap of the gods." "You were going to rig the charts, line up a crowd of little girls to phone the station all day asking for Barry Latchford's new single." "It isn't that easy. Latchford's nobody to these kids. They only request what everybody else is requesting. Michael Jackson, the Bee Gees." "Pay the men." "It gets complicated. What if some parents wonder where the kids are getting the money? Our involvement comes out, Latchford looks terrible, and so do Inch and Pullman." "Why didn't you think of this in the beginning?" "I was being optimistic. Forgive me." The telephone rang beside Inch. He picked it up. "Studio." "A call from Toronto, Mr. Inch. Barry Latchford." "Put him on," he said to Pullman. "It's Russ Columbo. Our troubles are just beginning." Pullman closed his eyes and sighed. "We were just talking about you, Barry. Did you get the record I sent you?" Inch listened for half a minute. "Feel free to do whatever you can to promote it up there. Meanwhile, we're going ahead as discussed." When the call was finished, Inch let the telephone drop onto its cradle as if it was something wet. "He's over the moon," he said. "We better produce some evidence that we're trying to sell his song." In Toronto, Barry Latchford went through the house looking for Carol. He found her in the television room. The set was playing with the sound off. She was placed in a chair in viewing position, trying to read a newspaper by the light from the screen. Her knitting rested on the carpet. Beside it was an ashtray full of cigarette ends and an empty beer bottle. "Your trouble is you don't have anything to do," he said. "Wrong," she said. "It says here Imperial Tobacco and Molson's Brewery have increased production. I'll never catch up." He sat on the floor. "That sounds like an unhappy woman." "You always had a good ear." He took the newspaper from her and snapped off the television, leaving only one source of light, the lamp in the hall outside the open door. "I really don't like to see you unhappy." "I'm sorry I can't please you with satisfaction I don't possess." She lit another cigarette. "It probably isn't your fault. Different things make us happy. I like dance halls, they call them discos now, and I hardly ever see the inside of one. I'd like to wear some of those wild leather clothes the kids are into, but you'd think I was crazy." He looked away, hoping she wouldn't go on. If she turned herself into one of those freaks, he couldn't imagine how he'd react. "You fooled me. First time I saw you singing in the club, I thought you were a swinger. We should have never gotten married." She blew a fierce shaft of smoke. "Are you in love with that writer character?" Carol picked up her knitting, held the needles poised, and stared at the particle of space between their tips. "Steve Pullman? Am I in love with him? Not quite." "He never takes his eyes off you." "Better not say that. You're making me all excited." "He wants to take you away to Baytown, or wherever the hell he comes from." Small-town bliss. Now there's a dream. Latchford put a firm hand on his wife's knee. "Don't leave me, Carol." "Message noted," she said, and the knitting needles began to click like a machine. The Montreal promotion never did get off the ground, but as things turned out, Pullman's failure to deliver didn't matter. Latchford took his copy of Summer Silence to a DJ friend at the top station in Toronto. He loved it, played it 3 times on one morning show, and the telephone began to ring. The process didn't stop for 2 months as the song reached the top of the charts and stayed there. The distributor told the factory to press another 50,000 and began spreading the word to radio stations and dealers across Canada. He also telephoned a connection in New York. They had a phenomenon on their hands, a song that couldn't fail to make it big. Indian summer is always a special time in Montreal. Bonfires sent pungent smoke trailing upward into hazy blue skies. The bittersweet afternoons are silent in memory of the days of warmth and comfort that are gone forever. Barry and Carol Latchford came down for the celebration at the Inch residence on the South Shore. It was clearly a time to open the champagne. The record was now the top-selling single in the history of Canadian pop music. Better still, a deal was set for distribution in the States. Latchford's dream had come true. The party was one of those Saturday affairs where the few people not invited turned up anyway, bringing bottles as admission. Every room was crowded, as were the back garden, the front lawn, the stairs, the garage, even the cars parked in the driveway. All the doors were open, the music system was on full volume, the sophisticated party dominated the entire neighborhood. Norman Inch finally managed to maneuver his wife out of the kitchen and into a quiet corner. "I'm worried about Steve," he said. "I told him not to follow wine with beer. I mean, the way he keeps after Carol Latchford, Barry's starting to look at him." Flora's eyes grew large and innocent. "So? So all we need is a fist fight between the guest of honor and the lyricist. It might be just what the party needs." "I don't know why I bother talking to you. People should be allowed to go where their actions take them. It helps the plot develop. These are not characters in your bloody novel." "Real people can live or die just like fictional characters," Florida blinked at her husband, "and I don't like the tone of your voice. My novel one day will surpass any of your so-called successes with chintzy songs about summer love." By 2 o'clock on Sunday morning, the police had paid 2 polite visits. The music was now turned low, most of the guests had gone home, and those few who remained were caged inside the house. The Latchfords had come up with luggage for a long weekend. Barry had removed his turtleneck sweater and suede jacket sometime after midnight and was now wearing his pajama top. He was sitting on a couch beside his hostess, swallowing cognac from a tumbler. "We've got to do it, Barry," Flora said. She crossed her legs and Richelieu repositioned himself on her lap without opening his eyes. "Do what?" Latchford was looking through a doorway at his wife dancing with Pullman in the next room. Carol was a lot shorter than Steve. Her cheek was pressed